What's up, what's up, what's up? This is your man, the STL stranger, Umar Lee. Hope everyone is enjoying this Monday in America. And we have some very important topics to discuss tonight. First of all, y'all can tune in to the episode I recorded earlier today with young Islamic scholar, Brother Issa Dandia of Brooklyn, and we discussed Brooklyn and Muslim history and American Muslim culture. And so you can get a taste of the sacred in my conversation with Assad. Also got an op-ed in St. Louis American out today. But right now, we're talking about the most important and pressing matter, in my opinion, in the city of St. Louis politics, and that is the merger discussion, the Better Together plan, which would merge St. Louis City and County, creating a municipal city. And obviously, this is one of the most historic events in the history of the 250-year plus history of St. Louis. This is something that is being widely debated. It's a very controversial proposal. Many people for it, many people against it. Of course, not to let the cat out of the bag, but I've issued my opinion already that in theory I support a merger, but I do not support this Better Together proposal. But if you do agree or you disagree, you can feel free to call in later. We're going to have some really great guests on tonight. And guest, I want you to do me a favor. Anyone who's on, I want you to immediately introduce yourself at the first opportunity that you can get. So I know Virvus Jones is supposed to be on, Andrew Arkills, STL Rainbow, and others. So when you get on the show, just introduce yourself. Is anyone with us yet?
Hi, STL Rainbow here.
All right. I was giving you a real name, and I can't remember it. But Fletcher Hendricks. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I actually that's a pseudonym. I am even that name because it's a couple neighborhoods from Indianapolis, and that's my former home for a little bit. I grew up in Indiana, and I hope tonight to be able to give a little bit of background on Indiana. I'm a real Hoosier. You got to be a Hoosier to know a Hoosier.
That's right. Hey,
yeah.
Well, I come from Hoosier stock, man. So St. Louis Hoosier stock. But
there you go.
It is.
That's awesome.
So, are you in St. Louis at the moment, or?
I am. Yeah, I've been in St. Louis for about 12 years. I've lived across the Rust Belt and various cities across the country since I moved out of Indiana. But yeah, I've been proud citizen of St. Louis.
You're a very vocal person on Twitter. You're known as a guy that gets a lot of information, you get a lot of scoops. So you're deep in somewhere getting a lot of scoops. And what is your, if I could ask you to give your basic opinion of the merger proposal, this not a proposal in theory, but this specific Better Together proposal.
Right. Right.
What are your basic thoughts on it?
Well, I have a lot of concerns, and again, most of those go back to the fact that I do not like what has happened in Indianapolis with their Unigov merger back in 1970. And I see some similarities here between what Better Together is proposing and what they're not proposing and what went down in Indianapolis. And one of the big things that I'm worried about is that we're not addressing schools. And that's one of the key things that Indianapolis did not address, unlike Nashville and Louisville, where public schools were already consolidated when they merged.
For those unfamiliar, let's just back up like someone's never heard of this proposal before. Schools are not a part of the Better Together proposal. That they're going to merge certain functions, but the schools won't be touched. Would that be correct?
Correct. Apparently, they're saying that this might be an issue that will be addressed in the future, but they really, again, say that, it's not something they even study up to this point.
And that seems to be a real, Alvin Reed, and I'm no big fan of Alvin, but, he stated on Donnybrook that the reason schools weren't being included is, you can't separate race from that issue, that once you say merger of school districts, then you're going to have a lot of white families uncomfortable thinking their schools are going to start becoming more African American. That would be one of the obvious reasons for the omission. Wouldn't you kind of be sympathetic to that point?
Yeah, it'd be very controversial. Again, in Louisville and Nashville, the courts had basically forced consolidation, and because schools were already consolidated and you had a single district, I think that helped ease the ability of the citizens to voluntarily vote for additional consolidation of the city and the county. In Indianapolis is a little bit different. I think that they recognized that they would be very controversial, and it would it would hinder their ability to merge into UniGov. So they avoided the subject entirely, and as a result, the same things that happened in St. Louis with people moving out of the primary city and the St. Louis public school system for better schools in the county and elsewhere, the exact same thing happened in Indianapolis. And in fact, actually, the core of Indianapolis lost as many people between 1970 when they merged and 2010 as the city of St. Louis did. And they have a lot of poverty, a lot of the very same issues that the core of St. Louis City has. So, it's very concerning that, it seems, from my perspective, that we're not addressing the single most important issue of having our children being better together by, retaining all of these, different school districts.
Was Dick Lugar the mayor of Indianapolis when they had the merger, or was he mayor later on? Yeah. Yeah,
actually, he was a young political gun at the time, and I don't think he was quite the mayor yet at the time, but subsequently he became mayor. I'm not sure of the exact timing of the date that he became mayor, but at its core, Indianapolis, you had a Democratic city and a Republican county, and Dick Lugar was definitely part of the Republican corporate establishment. They saw an opportunity for the county to really take over the Democratic city through UniGov, and that absolutely happened. We had at the time a lot of the Democrats in the city and African Americans in the city were concerned about what would happen, and I think again the experience since then proved that the African American and Democratic vote was diluted. The Republican powers really were dominant for several decades since merger. That's changed now a little bit more as Indianapolis has urbanized a bit, become more democratic and more diverse. A lot of the Republicans are out and growing Hamilton County now, no longer in Indianapolis and Marion County as much as they were before.
The reason I ask about Lugar is because I know he's a close friend of Mark Vitter over at the St. Louis Business Journal, and so it just in the back of my mind, it's a small crowd. I'm wondering, did they get any merger pointers from Lugar?
That's interesting.
One of the things that I kind of get offended by when they talk about the benefits of this merger is a few people had mentioned, well, the crime stats for St. Louis will go down because they'll count it differently if the city and county are together.
Right.
But I mean, there's a huge flaw in that logic. I mean, the crime stats may look different, but people are still going to be dead. They're still going to be murdered. It's not like the problem's going to go away. It's not like the percentage. I mean, the percentage of poverty may go away, but those people that are suffering are not going to be helped by a merger. It's just like the big problem with murders, the big problem with crime, the big problem with poverty is that it makes the image of St. Louis looks bad because of the numbers, not the actual fact that people are dying and people are living in poverty. I'm being told Virvus Jones is on now. Virvus?
Yes.
All right. How you doing tonight, Virvus?
I'm good.
Yeah,
how you
Virvus,
doing?
How you doing?
Umar?
I'm good. I'm good. You're the second guest on tonight, and we're going to all include you in the discussion. We have my man from we live in St. Louis. He was talking about the Indianapolis experience in relations to merger, and we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you in a little bit. Rainbow. I can't remember your name, but Rainbow. STL Rainbow. And we got another Hoosier on the line too. I'm told Andrew Arkills. Okay, a lot of Hoosiers, man. But neither one of you got a mullet, right? No. Hey, how you doing? No mullets between the two of y'all, right?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, sir. All right. Now, so we got STL Rainbow's basic opinion. He's opposed to the merger. He was talking about the Indianapolis experience. Virvus, up or down? Better together merger.
Oh, I'm right now. I'm down. Basically, I mean, I've been down since the first meeting I had with Dave Lipo about almost about a month ago now.
If you could give the fundamental reason or two that you're opposed to it, what would that be?
Well, as you stated before, I mean, I think a re-entry of the city into the county is a good idea because I think that cities that are part of counties usually have more resources. I mean, so that basically would be the city would be just another city in the county, and they would be that would be the cleanest way to do it. I think that the Better Together plan basically is creating what they call creating a unit government, but they're leaving all of the, they're taking all of the cities in the county and the city of St. Louis, and every city in the county, the 90, 89, whatever the number is now, will become what they call muni districts. And they will have all the powers they have now except for police and raising sales taxes. And I think they'll take their power to do tax increment financing development, and they'll take their power to do zoning away. So, but the city of St. Louis will become what is called a municipal corporation. And they'll be a municipal corporation for the purpose of paying off their debt. So that's one part of it that I have a problem with. The second part I have a problem with is that it extends the mayor's term and the county exec term. It says whoever is mayor and county exec as of January the 1st, 2019, will be transition mayor. That would be the city of St. Louis. The transition mayor will go into 2023, and Stenger, who is the county exec, his term will go until he'll become the metro mayor. His term will go into 2025. So basically, what they're saying is that there will be no more elections for who will be running the city, this metro city or any parts of St. Louis County, until 2025.
Right.
And that to me creates and the way they're going to have it set up is that they will develop a charter for this metro city that it will take 2/3 of a vote to change by the county council, but the charter will become the charter that everybody be living under, if it's passed in 2020, will be the charter of St. Louis County. The charter of the city of St. Louis will go away. So, I mean, and they basically have told people, even with their whole assumption that they're telling people that that this metro city will not assume any debt from any of the municipal corporations, and that's a lie. I mean, that's a blatant lie that they're saying, because in the proposal it says that the metro city can assume the debt. Now, I don't want to get too wonkish or too technical, but when you buy something, somebody got to sign for it. You know what I mean? When you go to the store and you buy something on credit, somebody's got to be responsible. They even have co-signers at times, you know. So when the city of St. Louis borrows money or Chesterfield borrows money, they put up with something called the credit of that city, or your credit, like your credit. You know, your credit becomes.
No, they ain't getting nothing on my credit.
But your
they
credit,
ain't getting half. They getting half a block in Weston with my credit. Yeah.
but what they're talking about is your ability to pay. You know, they're talking about your ability to pay the debt off. And so, if you don't have a city, then you don't have the ability. You don't exist. So somebody has to take over the debt. So that's what they've done. It was an opportunity, I think, for the city to rejoin the county. That, you know, a mistake that was made in 1876, which I do believe was a mistake, and they are now trying to create what I consider to be a government so that developers and business won't have to deal with small, you know, deal with people who are elected by the elected officials. They won't have to deal with Board Alderman. They won't have to deal with the mayor of the city of St. Louis. They'll just have to deal with one person in this metro government. Now, I don't even know why they're doing it, because I don't see them having any problem getting done what they want to do now. So it's almost like overkill. You know, they're getting all of the subsidies. They're getting all of the development subsidies that they want right now. But they just don't like coming down here and dealing with having to get 15 votes or having to go get 5 or 6 votes in the county at the county council. So it is basically a hostile takeover. Just like Icon came in here and took over PWA and sold off all of his assets and walked away with the pension fund and the money. And that's essentially what they're doing. They're saying we want the city, as I use a quote by one of the rappers. It says, you know, St. Louis, and this is the way I look at it. St. Louis white establishment Democrats and Republicans want their cornerback, and that's what
they want their cornerback. So I'm gonna move on to Andrew now. Get your thoughts, but just to respond to something that Virvus just said. I think one of the most troubling parts to me is, and they say, oh, don't get caught up in personalities and characters, they can change. But if you're telling me Steve Stenger is going to be the mayor until 2025, I wouldn't vote for Steve Stenger for dog catcher, and I hate dogs. So, you know, I mean, it's just bizarre and anti-democratic to me. Andrew Arkills, I want to present to you also Ron Parson, running for mayor of Florissant, said he'll probably be suing, and there's going to be a lot of lawsuits involved in this along the way. But Andrew Arkills, I want to propose a question to you.
Sure.
Does it seem fair to you? Does it seem democratic to you? Does it seem right to you that someone in Knob Noster, Missouri, in Cape Girardeau, in Kennett, in Advance, in Malden, in Hayti, in Kirksville, in Columbia, in Kansas City, Independence, Raytown, can vote on the future of St. Louis City and County, and they can override the votes of St. Louis City and County and dictate the future of St. Louis City and County, when I can't vote for the mayor at Advance, I can't vote for the mayor of Kansas City, I can't vote for the mayor of Springfield or Joplin. Does that stick you as being fundamentally undemocratic, or is that just me?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a little bit of an end run around the existing process, right? We've got the Board of Freeholders provision already existing in the Constitution that provides an avenue for the city and the county to propose basically any form of government to get back together or merge or annex county territory into the city or vice versa in any way that they want to. That already exists in the Constitution, and it's a local vote. It's a local process with one member of that Board of Freeholders appointed by the governor. So I have not seen anything in this proposal that I don't understand how that couldn't happen as a function of the Board of Freeholders. So the constitutional amendment that goes statewide does feel like a little bit of an end run to maybe shore up any softness in the vote share that they might get locally. And that's their prerogative, I guess. You just need signatures to get on the ballot, for better or worse, in Missouri. So I'm not a particular fan of the statewide vote as it pertains to who gets a say in the day-to-day function of government in St. Louis City and County.
What other problems would you have with this merger? Fundamentally, that kind of weren't discussed by Virvus and STL Rainbow.
Sure. So I'd echo some of STL Rainbow's concerns about schools. I understand that's a different portion of the Constitution, so that would have to be a separate amendment at the very least. But I was disappointed to hear that they were not even setting up another study group or sponsoring another study group to study getting schools back together, because that's where our regional inequality and inequity and all of that starts. And it's just reinforced all the way up, grade K through 12, and then you're 12 years down the cycle of having different access to different resources and education, and it doesn't help anything to have all of those still separated. A lot of my other concerns are around the process that this came about as a part of, right? So we've got 5 people as part of a task force. None of them were elected. None of them were selected by anyone other than Mayor Cruson, County Executive Stinger, and the Better Together Board. They're not accountable in any way. Their meeting notes aren't sunshineable. Like, we have no insight into the process by which this was written. And they've made it clear that this isn't a negotiation over the language that's in the amendment. This is their offer, and we'll now spend 2 years discussing it, but it's not open for negotiation or tweaks or anything like that. And I think in something this big, as painful as it would be to go and get public feedback, I think that's a vital part of doing something like this, right? We've suffered through 150 years of the consequences of the Great Divorce, and I think it would be a good idea to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more cautious about the steps that we take to put that back together, rather than a unelected, unaccountable volunteer board putting together amendment language, which then goes to the entire state and seeks to reform how everyday St. Louisans interact with government on a daily basis. So
STL Rainbow, let's think about Better Together. Who is Better Together, first of all? I mean, because I think Andrew Arkills highlights some interesting points that you have it's kind of a shadowy group backed by a billionaire, Rex Singenfeld, that is really trying to remake St. Louis City and County, and we're not even quite sure who they, who are they? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
All right. Well, I'm not sure I'm the best to answer that, but yeah, I agree. It's a little bit of a mystery to me. Just as someone who was, kind of interested in following what this process would be all about, with these studies and these reports that they're going to be issuing, I felt really misled just as a citizen. I thought that this was going to be, this task force was going to be having some meeting with the public, gathering information, and making some recommendations, and that there would be then feedback on that report from the public, sort of a draft, and then something would go on the ballot for people to vote on. And when this started out, we were promised that this would be just a local vote only. I believe both the former mayor and the former county executive made that promise specifically. And so just in this past couple months when we heard that, oh, no, this is going to be basically the final plan is going to go on to the statewide ballot right away. We're going to hold some meetings, but these are going to be basically education. We're going to inform you about why this is so great, as opposed to getting feedback on whether this is what the people want. I felt personally offended by it. So I think there's definitely a level of arrogance here on this Better Together group, and I'm not sure where that breakdown happened, but if they feel that they expressed their intentions clearly to the public of what their intentions were, I would love to see going back in time where they documented, we're going to have this final report. We don't care what the public thinks. It's great. We'll make a few minor technical revisions to it after we saw some editing errors. We're going to resubmit that right away to the Secretary of State. That personally was very disappointing to me. So yes, I think you're right. There's a lot of money behind this. Rex Singfield, the billionaire, is a major funding of Better Together. There's a lot of corporate support there, and there's these 5 members of the task force that weren't very diverse at all in terms of their employment, very much corporate connected, and it seems like the people were left out.
Just Umar, just when you say the who, I mean, just you can look at the board of directors of Better Together. The board of directors is basically people like Jeff Rainford, who was former chief of staff to mayor, so a consultant trying to get the city who represents the company that wants to bid on airport privatization. Then there's Jeff Abusi, who is the lobbyist for the city. He's also a consultant on the airport privatization consulting team. Then you got Mary Ellen Ponder, who is the director of a group called Pelopidas. Well, Pelopidas is the political action committee, for lack of a better term, that Rex Singfield funds, and that's his lobbying group. And she is the director of that. And her and all of these people, there's this interlocking, incestuous relationship all over and then Nancy all over the Better Together group, and they all are in some way either connected to Steve Stinger, to the people who are running the campaign for Better Together is Ed Rohde, Mike Kelly, the same people who ran Lida's and Stinger's campaign committee. I mean, so for people to say, for Lida and Steve Stinger to basically kind of say, well, this came about through this grassroots process, when you've got all these political operatives being the ones who are the consultants and on the board of directors and directing exactly how this is going to be done. Because if I was Steve Stinger, I would do this. I would, what he looked at was an opportunity to not have to run for re-election and be in office basically for 7 years, when his normal term would have been up in 2022. Now his term goes to 2025. Because remember,
he wanted
was against it, and he was against this. He was against when he first got elected. He ran against Dooley against merger. Then all of a sudden, he's for this plan. Well, I would be too if you gave me a 7. In other words, you extended and almost gave me another term. then put me in the best position to run as the new Metro mayor. So,
and he barely beat Montevani in this last race.
I think 1,500 votes, if I remember, something in that area. And so, it just reeks of like cronyism, and under the guise of, and they even had the audacity to use the Ferguson report as kind of their basis for doing all this, but there's nothing in the plan except for they consolidate all the muni courts. That's the only thing that even comes close to addressing the Ferguson report, and everything else is stuff that you could do without having a statewide vote. If you want to consolidate the police departments, you don't have to have a statewide vote.
I do believe a Ferguson connection is some of this big donor money and corporate money that's floating around that floated in certain directions after Ferguson. You are seeing some of those people in support of the Better Together plan that were not necessarily participants in the Ferguson uprising, but were got hired to interpret Ferguson to the public after Ferguson. Andrew, you're a big city political guy. You know a lot about city politics.
Sure.
What does this 30? I hear it's going to be a 33-member council. Is that what's going to govern St. Louis City and County under this new city? Will the Board of Aldermen no longer be a thing? Will St. Louis County Council and the Florissant City Council, will they no longer be a thing, or exactly how does that work?
Yeah, so as Virvus alluded to, the city of St. Louis becomes after the transition period is over with, the city becomes a municipal corporation. It's the only existing municipality in the city or the county that becomes that form of government to manage debt service. So it's a 5-person appointed board that's in charge of paying down our debt, as well as managing any services that still remain at the municipal level for the city of St. Louis. So things like trash and water, initially, if those stay with the municipality of the city of St. Louis, those would be managed by a 5-person unappointed or 5-person unelected board that's appointed by the Metro Mayor. So that seems problematic to me on its face. If you have somebody in charge of providing services and they're not accountable in any way, shape, or form to the people they're providing services for, that kind of rubs me the wrong way quite a bit. But to answer your question, there will be the boards of aldermen and city councils in the existing municipalities in the county will remain. They'll just be in charge of the taxing subdistrict instead of the municipality. So those folks get to keep their offices. They get to keep their titles. They'll still be known as boards of aldermen and mayors of those municipal districts. The board of aldermen gets dissolved after that 2-year transition period, and will elect a new 33-member Metro Council, which will be equally split up by population. And then it will end up with the city essentially having, best case scenario, 8 or 9 of those 33 seats. So we'll do away with our direct elected representation, and our only elected say will be at the Metro Council level, and we won't have a majority of those votes for sure. And then we'll have that say in the Metro citywide elections, the Metro Mayor, the prosecuting attorney, and the assessor, and that will be the extent of our elected officers, other than the Fire Protection District that'll take over for our St. Louis Fire Department.
So I want to pivot to Virvus right now, because you're telling me 8 or 9 of the 33 are going to be from the city of St. Louis. And if you could do the math, let's just say 3 or 4 of them would more than likely be black. You're talking about black representation in the city taking a big hit, and in the county taking a big hit. You know, there's a lot of African American political power in North St. Louis County. And everything in St. Louis is about race at the end of the day. How much of this do you think is a active aggression towards black political power in St. Louis City and County?
From my standpoint, I think it is either, as they say, de jure, which is legal, or de facto. The de facto result is that you're going to reduce the amount of African American political influence in this region, because it to me it is not a coincidence that the city of St. Louis, which now has, of the 7 citywide elected officials, has, of the 9 citywide elected officials, 7 of them are African American. Just elected a prosecutor, just elected a recorder of deeds. You know, whether you believe that that's a good form of government or not, that's a form of government that's been in place in the city of St. Louis since 1914, or actually since 1876, when we became a county. So that's been the form of government. And we can argue about the structure, but the consequence is every one of those African American elected officials, including the 11 members on the Board of Aldermen, will go away. The 2 members of the county council that are African American will go away, and so you will then be running in these districts that will be 40,000 people per district, 33 seats, and they will be scattered. And our representation, as far as a city resident, I go from being, living in a city that is 49, 51%, depending on who you talk to, African American, to a city that is 30% African American, and my influence will be lessened because they'll say you have fewer. It takes a lot of money to run in a city that's 1.3 million people. It takes a lot of money to run as a citywide elected official in a situation like that. And so you're going to, and the way it's being set up, if they had said that in the spring of 2021 and in the summer of 2022, you will have elections to elect who the next county executive is going to be, or the next mayor of the city of St. Louis is going to be, and those people would carry us through the transition. I might not have attributed it too much of the race thing to it, but they said no, that's not going to be the situation. They're not going to, because what I heard you talking to St. Louis Rainbow about Indianapolis. Now, Lugar did run for mayor right after the union government was voted in. They had an election right after that, and he won. Now, in no other city, none of these other union government situations, Nashville, Louisville, or Indianapolis, did they suspend the election. They did not say that they were going to suspend the election during transition. So
why do you think they're suspending the election?
I think they're doing that so that they can make sure that the people who support this plan will be the ones who put it together. So you won't have any pushback. I mean, they're saying that even though the Board of Aldermen and the County Council will be in existence until 2023, the mayor will, and the transition mayor and the metro mayor, which is Stinger, will draw up a charter, submit it to both these bodies, and they have 30 days, or I think it's 30 days, to approve it. If they don't approve it, then they become the charter. So you're going to read through a charter and give these people, a limited amount of time to approve it. And the only way that you can change anything that'll be in the charter after it's passed is with a 2/3 vote of the 1.3 million people. And the only way you can change. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of things they put in this plan that makes it much harder and much less democratic. So that if, you go from, even though it's going to pass, the constitutional amendment is going to pass with a simple majority that will change the government. You can't. The people living in the St. Louis in that metro government can't change it without a 2/3 vote, 67%. And you know how hard it is to get 2/3 of the people to vote for anything. And so the process is being set up in a way of saying this is what we're going to do, and you're not going to have anything to say about it or be able to change it without these super majorities. And I think the biggest thing that bothers me is that we can't even have any input into this. It's the done deal. They had a press conference in the morning, put the petition submitted to the Secretary of State that afternoon.
Now, I got a couple questions for whoever want to take them. Well, number one is an observation before I get to a question. And that observation is that I saw a lot of chatter online outside of the St. Louis City politics chatter. A lot of people in the county, a lot of Republicans in particular, don't like this proposal. They don't want anything to do with St. Louis City. And they're saying that if this merger becomes a reality, that you're going to see exodus out to Jefferson County and St. Charles County and other outlying counties. I can see that happening. I don't know if it's going to be a mass exodus, but I can definitely see people moving out. But the question I have, and any of y'all that want to answer this can answer it, what is the motivation for outstate voters to even vote on this? Is if I'm in Cape Girardeau or Joplin or Kirksville, Kansas City, why do I even vote on this issue, and who's telling me to vote on it? In other words, if I'm voting on St. Louis City County, I don't live there. It has nothing to do with me. If I'm a Republican and this has Republican support, am I just going to go with the Republican way of thinking on this? Or if I'm a Democrat, where do I go? Anyone want to take that question?
Yeah. I think, well, they've already announced they're putting $25 million into a yes on whatever this proposition or amendment ends up being called on the ballot campaign to push it out state, which is interesting because we hear our Republican officials in Jefferson City constantly preach about local control and having home rule and say over our own affairs. But I think there's also this undercurrent of there's something inherently wrong with St. Louis from an outstate perspective, and this may be their opportunity to come in and fix that. I think that might be, if not a blatant message that gets pushed, there will certainly be an undercurrent of that. This is our opportunity to fix St. Louis's problems for them. I don't understand what the messaging is going to be, given that a very strong libertarian bent, conservative bent outstate is very strongly pro-local control. This amendment kind of does an in-run around local control. It gives very strong local control to the executive once it's in place, but the avenue by which they're trying to put it in place is the opposite of that.
Because I can see a scenario where local mayors throughout the state kind of, galvanize people to vote against this because they don't want someone coming in and changing their city structure. I can see that as a scenario.
Well,
yeah,
I think the argument in Kansas City will be because Kansas City has some similarities in St. Louis to this extent. First, they have earnings tax, and I think that's kind of like the big elephant in the room that we haven't discussed tonight. I think that this all started because Rex Sinfeld, who is a student of Milton Friedman from the University of Chicago, and they have this philosophy that everything ought to be market-driven. Government ought to be market-driven. Schools ought to be market-driven. And there should be competition and also this whole issue of you shouldn't be paying taxes on your earnings. Once you earn money and pay taxes on it, that should be it. I mean, and as a matter of fact, Lyda Cruz introduced a bill back about 10 years ago that gave people who they eliminated earnings tax on what they call stock dividends and stock dividend proceeds, and also on stock when people give you stock options. So it really it took people who get stock options and stock dividends don't have to pay earnings tax. Well, Rex Sinfeld put on the statewide ballot a bill that a constitutional amendment that basically got rid of the earnings tax, and got rid of it. Said no other city could ever use earnings tax as a basis of raising revenue. Well, and he also said that every 5 years, Kansas City and St. Louis have to vote. The voters have to vote to renew their earnings tax. Well, under this new plan, the earnings tax will go away because the city of St. Louis won't exist anymore, and this new city couldn't issue an earnings tax. It would go away over 10 years. Well, Kansas City has earnings tax, and Kansas City sits in 4 counties. Kansas City has 53 municipalities around it. And so I think one of the messages that we're trying to push to people is that, hey, you're next. Because remember, Rex was the same person who went to Kansas, and I think my personal opinion messed up the Kansas tax structure to the extent they damn near went broke.
And now they got Democrats
revenue problems. And
right, and they have a backlash. A bunch of Democrats just got elected.
That's right. Democrats got elected. The governor, matter of fact, they elected a Democratic governor this year. So my point being is, I think that suddenly somehow the conversation has to have with these other elected officials in these other places that, hey, if a guy who's a billionaire can take 1 year of his earnings on $1 billion, and can come out there and can start and can wreak havoc with your government if he doesn't like it. And I think there are polls that have been done that have shown that that's the kind of attitude they have. These people don't particularly care for this.
What are the perceived, anyone can take this question, what are the perceived benefits? What are the, I'm not talking about for Rex, I'm not talking about for Better Together, I'm talking about for a St. Louis voter that would be supportive of the Better Together plan. Because, I do see quite a bit of support. Matter of fact, STL Rainbow, I think you were getting into it with somebody arguing today on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. What are their main reasons for supporting this merger proposal?
Well, I guess if we can go back to Indianapolis, it was a great success in terms of, transforming it from Indian No Place or Naptown to a place that had a little bit of excitement, got it on the map a little bit. So I think definitely there would be that.
I think excitement. I think Indianapolis is,
Yeah. So there'd be that civic pride a little bit, that people would buy into. It would, we talked a little bit earlier about stats and getting off the list. It really won't do much to actually improve the lives of people whose lives need to be improved. As the Indianapolis, if we follow that Indianapolis experience. But again, for the person who, is having a pretty good life, but wants to see a little bit more activity, around, I think we can have that, and we'll get off of those, most dangerous lists and so on. But like Indianapolis, has had 3 record years of homicide for their city, and their homicide rate for their Marion County is about the same as for St. Louis City and county when you combine those two. So again, there's that question of, are we doing this for, civic pride and so on, or are we doing it to really improve lives? And that's, the question that I have.
Andrew Arkills, I've been told that you were rumbling with Todd Oldenburg, the St. Louis. I don't even know who the hell he is. He's St. Louis Hills Alderman. You were rumbling with him today on Twitter. Is that right, Andrew?
We're having a friendly discussion.
Who is Todd Oldenburg? He's a member of the Board of Aldermen?
Yeah, he's the 16th Ward Alderman, yeah.
I ain't never heard of him. But good. Yeah.
But, I mean, the general gist of the discussion was how it actually decreases fragmentation when we've got some streamlined services, yes. And I think those are some of the positives. We've got one court system. We'll have one police department. That sets up the possibility for more just and equitable policing standards, but that doesn't concretely put that in place. We've got one municipal court system, but it also holds on to these vestiges of fragmentation that have killed us for the past 150 years, where literally block to block you're in a different town, and everybody's got their own little 2 square mile patch of territory that they run however they see fit, and it's not in concert with each other. So I was asking him how it actually decreased fragmentation. We went around it a little bit about decreasing the city's elected representation. I got accused of not seeing anything positive about it, which I've plainly been upfront that I do see positives in it. I think there's potential if there's an opportunity for people to give feedback to Better Together and maybe have them tweak some pieces of this. This could be a lot better proposal than it is currently, but Better Together's been pretty clear about the fact that this isn't a negotiation, and I think that's it'll be remain to be seen if that's a fatal flaw, but they've been pretty arrogant about the fact that this is their way or the highway, and we can take it or leave it, and the we being the state of Missouri, not necessarily St. Louis City and County either. So it's I think there's people want to.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
People want to pigeonhole you into either being extremely pro this amendment or extremely con, and there seems to be no room to stake out a middle ground. I don't think a lot of the people that are against this specific amendment in its current iteration are against mergers of St. Louis City and County as a concept. I think pretty much everybody can admit that the way that we're doing stuff right now is broken. I don't think there's too many cheerleaders of the status quo as is, as it currently exists in St. Louis City and County. I think that's a false dichotomy that people are trying to push people into. You can be in favor of mergers while having serious reservations about this particular proposal, and I think that's where a lot of the conversations are breaking down right now. Is people aren't allowed to stake out a position somewhere in the middle, and ask that we make this a little bit more equitable, a little bit more open to public discussion before we close the book on the final ballot language and submit it to the Secretary of State.
Now you mentioned the police.
I agree. Umar, there are some financial benefits from this, and I can, because it costs the city. The city of St. Louis now has a jail that we have to pay for, and the county has a jail. I mean, if you merge those two criminal justice systems, I mean, you could save money right there. Because but you could save money if the city became part of the county, because if the city became part of the county, then all of those functions become county functions: jail, prosecution, and courts. That costs the city X number of dollars a year. And I remember when the judges gave us a bill about 25 years ago and told us we had to redo the entire circuit court building, the civil, or they call it the Carnahan building now, but it was across the street from the Carnahan. I'm sorry, the old courthouse. Not the old courthouse, but the courthouse. We had to spend almost $20 million to rehab it, because by law the judge told you that gave you a budget, you had to pass it. And I'm saying that we have to pay for our courts. So there are some savings there. There's some savings, and I think criminal justice would probably benefit from some type of merger.
You close the workhouse.
The process. You could close the workhouse. You'd have more resources to probably invest in maybe some mental health services for people and do some better criminal justice for people, provide better services. My problem is that you can talk about that without a merger. I mean, and the only thing that we've merged lately was our economic development, and that didn't take no cronyism away, because that's where you had the biggest problem with Sheila. Who was it? The woman who was the director of that economic partnership. You know,
Sheila Sweeney.
Sheila Sweeney, who he accused of Stinger of using that as kind of like a piggy bank to pay back his political supporters. So my point is that you can merge all day long, but it is always becomes the who too, in terms of savings, how you save stuff. Did we save anything by leasing out the Northwest Plaza by moving the Board of Election Commissioners out to the Northwest Plaza so that Stinger's big donors would have a major tenant? No, that cost us money. My point being is that all of these decisions that are made by people, and they're trying to say that 100% a structure will make it better, and that's not necessarily true. It's also, you got to have enlightened leadership.
One issue that comes to my mind is that if you're going to have one police force, would this put Belmar and St. Louis County in charge of the police? Would that be correct?
Well, I don't know how they would select the chief, but that's possible, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have, they're going to have one chief, so. And the county charter is the charter that's going to be the what governs us until they come up with a new charter. So I think probably in the near future, yeah.
And again, I think the key thing to take away is that if the city it dissolves and merges into the county as opposed to simply re-entering the county, we're going to be a unit of 1.3 million people, but the political epicenter of that is going to be suburban. And so it's going to be the type of leadership that that suburban wealthy population elects and funds. So we're going to get more of the Stenger, Belmar type representation over that 1.3 million population. If we re-entered as a city, we would have a much more urban representation at the city level. We'd retain that, and with that 1.3 million, we'd still be leaning towards more conservative suburban values, but it would be a little bit better present.
I want to disagree with you a little bit just there, right there on that point, because I think we can fall into a little bit of antiquated thinking. These ain't your parents' generation suburbs. Those conservative suburbanites, they're largely in St. Charles County and places like that now. St. Louis County, as in most inner suburbs around the country, the inner suburbs are the new inner city, especially with the popularity of urbanism and gentrification with younger whites, moving back into the city. A lot of your working class, blue collar, and lower income areas are in the older suburbs. So there's a lot of working class and poor voters in St. Louis County. And the county's definitely trended Democrat. So there's definitely conservative pockets. Yeah, there's definitely some conservative pockets in St. Louis County. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of Republicans in St. Louis County, but nowhere near to the extent as it was 20 and 30 years ago when people like Gene McNary were in office, and if you look at North County now, North County is there's only a handful of municipalities in North County that don't have African American mayors that I can think of off the top of my head.
certainly.
And Florissant.
Florissant and Ferguson, James Knowles, and you got your first black candidate for mayor, Rob Parson. We just had him on the episode. But even though I get what you're trying to say, though, Big, even with that, there still is politically a kind of conservatism in St. Louis County, not in the sense of Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's more exactly. And then you have folks like in South County who, in unincorporated South County, I remember there was a big brouhaha about having affordable senior housing in one of the unincorporated areas, and it was in Stenger's old district, and they were up in arms about having, moderate income seniors living in their community with this new development. And that's the type of thing that kind of when I, think of, I don't think of it as, because we're almost all Democrat, but I think there is, again, a little bit more conservative suburban value there still remaining.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, I said with Steve Stinger's South County base, they were talking about North-South Metrolink, and I said the only North-South Metrolink you're going to get coming from Stinger is from South County to Branson. You might get a South County to Branson Metrolink line. I mean, look, when you talk about St. Louis, I always, left, right, Democrat, Republican. To me, the big division in St. Louis is race politically. Yeah. So Steve Stinger definitely comes from a South County white base, whether they be Democrat or Republican, whatever. He comes from that kind of, what I refer to as Southside Hoosier culture that, is whether they be Democrat or Republican, they definitely have some conservative values to them. And I just, when you think of someone to represent the city of St. Louis, I just don't see how Steve Stinger has any qualification whatsoever to represent the city of St. Louis. I mean, it's just so preposterous that you go to Walnut Park and JVL, and Steve Stinger is the man with the plan. It just seems so patently absurd, when you think about it. I mean, they're saying, okay, don't get caught up in his personality, but you have to when we're talking about it's going to be 6-7 years without an election. He's going to be in office in 2025. I mean, that's a major.
Omar, the irony of St. Louis County is that if you look at a lot of the people who Stinger, I think, is originally from the city. Bob McCullough was from the city. Charlie Dooley was from North County. And so, when you look at a lot of the people who got elected out there, a lot of them came out of the city into the county. I mean,
that's true.
So that's probably why you have that what you call that transformation going on, in St. Louis County. And it started, and Buzz Westfall grew up in Clinton Peabody. You know what I mean? So before he became elected, before he moved to the county and became prosecutor. And so it's those people that moved, and the people that you're talking about, those Republicans, moved out of North County into St. Charles a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. And and same thing. I think that's who might move out of St. Louis County, so to just make it more Democratic than less Democratic. And from a political standpoint, I'm not. I understand. I mean, I'm not one who is clearly saying that you cannot elect black elected officials if you merge St. Louis County. I think that in a Democratic primaries. In Democratic primaries, you're going to have African Americans going to dominate those Democratic primaries because they both Democratic. So you will produce Democratic candidates, pretty much, and that's really what happens. That's what happened with Stinger beat Dooley in the Democratic primary, and then he he was able to win the Republicans. Well, the first time he ran, Ferguson was still on the first time Ferguson kind of stung him because he only won by 1,300 votes that time in the general election. And then in the primary this time he won. So Well, he's been, but the point I guess I'm making, anything else, is that the politics notwithstanding, I think there's a way you do things and a way you produce, and what they've given Stinger is I think an advantage for him to create even more cronyism in the governing of this metro city.
Yeah, I mean, but how do you get beyond that? You know, when there's no opportunity, from my understanding, to correct me if I'm wrong, they're having some town halls. These are limited town halls, and I think 150 people apiece at each of them. And from what I understand, the tickets are hard to come by. Or is anybody getting into any of these town halls? Any of y'all got tickets, or any of y'all plan on going to any of them?
I'm not trying. I'm not going to a meeting where I don't have, all you do is listen to me.
So there's no Q&A?
No, well, there's Q&A, but there's no. In other words, any information they get, they're not going to use, because they're saying they're not going to change their petition.
Right, so they're saying they're not going to change their petitions.
Yeah, they're more
so
of a sales pitches.
Right.
And compare, though, I think, like the town halls, if I understand right, that they held while they were drafting this, got a couple hundred people, because there wasn't a lot of interest, because people didn't really know the enormity of what was going on. But now that they announced, then people are getting tickets because they want to know what this is all about. If they have done this process to get feedback about their a draft plan, that would have been great.
But they
really could have.
Remember, in the beginning, they said this was supposed to be a research effort. This was not supposed to be developing a plan.
Absolutely.
They didn't develop a plan until about a year ago, when the 5-member group was put together by Stinger and after Cruson got elected. In 2017, they put together the 5-member working group that was supposed to come up with a plan. But the original mission of Better Together was research, look at what's wrong, and then make a report to the public about what is wrong. Then came the second phase. The second phase is where they started talking about they were supposed to be making reports to the people on what they had found out, and from those reports, they could have been open, and said, hey, we want to get feedback on what kind of structure you think. But I don't remember none of that conversation happening.
Right.
Yeah, I think to Rainbow's point, there was an average of 60 people at the town halls that they held, couched as information gathering or feedback sessions, because up until about November or December of this past year, nobody knew that this was going to result in any sort of plan. The language they were using very specifically was Better Together Task Force will present their recommendation. They never said we will present a constitutional amendment that will go on the ballot, and this is your opportunity to have input on that. I think you would have more than 60 people showing up on average at a meeting if you said this will definitively end in a constitutional ballot that will go, or a constitutional amendment that will go on the ballot. And it wasn't couched that way, so people, like I would have been at every single one of those town halls if that was the case, but that's not how it was advertised.
Who are the major groups supporting this at this time? I mean, we know the, Better Together, but civic people, your corporate leaders, your Cortex folks. Who are the main boosters of it right now?
Civic Progress is the only group that's come out as a group that's supporting it, and so far that's Civic Progress and the mayor and Stinger. I mean, that's. I haven't seen where the RBC, the Regional Business Council, has taken a position, and I don't think that the Regional Chamber has taken a position that I know of. I haven't heard anything from them. So the only group that I know but Civic Progress is the starter, stirs the milkshake. That everybody else kind of flows from them. So that's the major corporations.
Have y'all seen? Isn't the Post-Dispatch pretty enthusiastic about the merger proposal from what I'm seeing?
They started out that way. I mean, but I think once the details came out, Tony Messenger has kind of backed off of it somewhat because of the Stinger crowning. Stinger is the king of the Metro City. I think he's basically backed off, but I haven't seen any editorials from the Post-Dispatch since then. Since they first had they were almost gushing over it at first. They were, but I haven't seen anything since then. I think once the details came out, I think it backed off people with it.
I think to the point about personality, I think that's a convenient way to brush people's concerns off, right? I would have these same concerns about process and people being unelected to these positions where they get to invest all of this executive power in this new charter if it was Manavani and Jones occupying the seats that Stinger and Krushen currently occupy, right? For me, it's not about the personalities or whether or not I care for those people personally or politically, right? It's about the process and the fact that when those two seats were last elected, nobody knew that we were electing the future Metro Mayor and transition Metro Mayor, nor that they would be invested with all of this charter writing power. That was not under consideration. Yeah, mergers were being talked about, but not specifically those people or those seats occupying those centers of power in this new proposed form of government. And to Rainbow's point, it's not without precedent to expect that you would be able to elect the transition mayor. Dick Lugar was, or I think Virvus made that point. Dick Lugar was elected the initial transition mayor of Indianapolis after the Unigov proposal passed the Indiana State Legislature. So the people in the new footprint of the new Unigov system of government got a say on the person that they were putting in place to form that government. Dick Lugar had a bunch of power in how that new government looked, but he was elected to fulfill that responsibility.
Right.
Man, unbelievable. What do you think the position of Parson? As Parson came out, has Parson stated a position, Governor Parson of Missouri, or has he kind of tried to stay out of the fray?
I think he basically came out with a pretty much of a, I'm going to sit and wait and look and see, because one of the things he has to consider is he'll be on the ballot in 2020. And I think he's going to stick his finger up and see how the wind, which way the wind is blowing. Because, you got to be on the ballot in 2020. If this thing looks like it's going to affect, turnout in the city and St. Louis and Kansas City, and it depends on who his opposition is, too. If he has opposition, in the Republican, on the, not in the Republican primaries, but in the general election, if he has formidable opposition, I think that's going to determine where he is, because he's already got a PAC that supports him, already got an $800,000 contribution from Rex. So I think it's going to be something to watch. And if he's already kind of came out with a cautious kind of endorsement, not endorsement, just a cautious saying, okay, we'll see what happens. But I think that anybody on the ballot in 2020 will be will either try to stay away from it or be against it, I would think, because you Kansas City and St. Louis are two strong voting sections of the state, and they can come out, it depends on how this thing goes, they could come out pretty strong. I don't think you're going to need a whole lot of publicity or money to get people riled up in Kansas City and St. Louis about this. So,
has Peter Kinder come out pro or con? Do you know? I know he likes to dabble in St. Louis politics and likes to hang out in St. Louis.
I haven't heard Peter Kinder. I haven't heard him.
You haven't heard? Yeah, he does like to hang out in St. Louis, as I'm being reminded. But yeah,
we'll leave that alone.
We'll leave that alone. But I once debated him on KMOX, and I was told, don't bring that up before the debate. They must have knew me too well.
Well, he and Greitens had the same girlfriend, so
Oh yeah. So,
so
just
better leave that low.
Yeah, just leave it alone. You know what I'm saying? Now Greitens, well, we're not gonna get into that now, but I expect him to run for office again. I think he got too much ego to sit on the sidelines for long. Yeah,
he's from St. Louis. Could be our Metro mayor.
Could be our Metro mayor. Could be. I think he bought a house out in Ironwood or someplace in that place. Inbrook. Yeah, I never heard of that place, but Inbrook was supposed to be
out in Warren County.
Yeah, a nice place out there. So yeah, I mean, I think that generally how I think in life, just in general, I see myself as having bad luck. So whatever I want to happen, the opposite usually happens. So because I'm opposed to the merger, I'm pretty sure that this thing is going to go through, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. I think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, a lot of litigation around this. But what do you think of this? State Rep Bosley has wants to introduce some legislation at the state legislature to just kind of override this, to give the local communities a say. How effective do you think that could be?
I don't know if it's constitutional or not. I don't know if you can set up a separate vote, in other words, I don't know if in other words, the Constitution says a constitutional member requires 51% of the vote. I don't know if you, and it's going to go on the ballot at the same time this is going on the ballot. It can't go on the ballot in 2020. So I don't know how effective that will be, unless they put it on the ballot prior to this going on the ballot, which I don't know if they can do it in 2000. The only time they can do it is 2019, because I think constitutional amendments have to go on the statewide ballot, and I don't know if they have to go in general elections or primary elections or not. But let me give you some. Better Together did a poll, or somebody did a poll, a group called Remington out of Kansas City. They're a Republican pollster, and they came back with a poll. They asked the question: do you support a merger, a vote to merge St. Louis City and St. Louis County? And the poll came back 26% for, 36% against, and 38% undecided. Mm-hmm. So they got a long way to go. Now they got a lot of money. They got $25 million.
Right. So they got $25 million to help them get to that where they need to,
they
go.
They got to do a lot of selling right now. So
they'll be running a lot of commercials, a lot of Facebook ads, a lot of Twitter ads, and they'll get some politicians and celebrities behind it.
But a normal person looking at those numbers, 25% of for, and you got 36% against. A normal person wouldn't spend $25 million. He would say, "I'm too far underwater." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it will take every penny of that $25 million to maybe win. Mm-hmm. So, but we ain't talking about Singfield has wasted a lot of money on a lot of elections in the state of Missouri on a lot of things. Trying to set up vouchers in the school system and reduce tax. So he will spend the money.
Well, the key is there going to be money on the other side? Our opponents of the merger are going to be able to get some money, and that's the thing. No. There's not going to be money on the other side. Right.
No, so, but we beaten transportation taxes, without any money. We beaten these sales taxes if they try to raise the gas tax. We beat them without money. So money ain't always the key. It's just a question of how guerrilla you want to go with it. And right now,
STL Rainbow. If I ask you, STL Rainbow, do you think this is going to pass and go through? What is your opinion?
Well, I saw an interesting tweet from former Representative Chris Kelly from Columbia, and he has a really good pulse on outstate, and he seemed pretty convincing that this is not going to pass outside of St. Louis and St. Louis County. And an interesting question then is, if it doesn't pass, what does that do to, this effort to, again, increase collaboration? I think we have an opportunity here to do something good. Does a failed vote set us back even further? Or do we reassemble those pieces and maybe in 2022 or whenever, maybe put something together that's not quite as far-reaching, maybe a little bit more practical? So, in fact, actually, that might be what I hope for, is that we not try to create this thing, this new form of government that needs constitutional change. Let's just use our tools at our disposal to move that ball forward and get some real concrete gains, but not worry about being too cute with these municipal districts and municipal corporations and all of that.
I think you could do something like that. If you put on the ballot right now a proposition that St. Louis City will emerge into St. Louis County as a city,
right?
Just as a part of St. Louis County, and then because what would happen is that a lot of those things that we have, a lot of those county responsibilities that we have would go away. So there would be a savings to the city of St. Louis. Now, there are those other people who talk, and if they want to reform TIF, they got to, you go to the state legislature and reform TIF. And also, you don't even go to state legislature and reform TIF. Just elect people who are not going to do TIF the way we're doing it now. You know what I mean? You don't have to, the TIF laws, in terms of how blighting is defined and all that, that's a function of these local municipalities and defining how blight is defined. You could say, the St. Louis City can say, look, blight has to have certain standards. And that would work. You don't have to go to the state law to change it, because we are the kicker. We are the TIF. The enemy is us. We can fix this.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting. Do you think that? What do we got here? We got coming up here the president's race, which President of Board of Aldermen, which this doesn't seem to be playing too heavily in. That doesn't seem to be too big of an issue in this race. But I guess coming in 2020, this is going to be, at least locally in St. Louis, in terms of the congressional race, Lacey Clay's race and others, this seems to would be the number one issue on the ballot in 2020. Would you not agree? Yeah.
I mean, you got 4 countywide offices that'll be up for election. You got the governor's race, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, all those people on the ballot, and Trump.
And maybe Trump, maybe not. If he's not locked up, but Trump.
Well, so, well, I'm gonna say he's gonna be there right now. But,
yeah, I'll say probably so. I would say probably so, but you never know. But he probably will be.
Well, it'll be a presidential election. There's gonna be a presidential election, so
it'll be somebody gonna be running. Yeah.
Right.
It's gonna be.
So 2020, you just think you're gonna have the presidential election, statewide elections, and the possibility of the city county of this new uni government. That's going to be a lot of stuff for people to swallow.
Okay, last question, because we only got a few minutes left. Mark has reminded me to ask about an important question. I know my friend Tim Kaminsky and others were involved for years with CAPCAR, Coalition Against Police Crimes and Repression, Jamal Rogers, many others. Working on it for years. I finally got it past police oversight. Apparently, it goes away if this goes through. Do any of y'all know about that?
Yeah. So the city charter gets done away with, and we revert back to the county charter. So the laws governing the city of St. Louis will essentially be as if we were part of unincorporated St. Louis County. So
Right.
If there is not a citizen oversight board in the county right now with subpoena power, then that will not exist in the new entity going forward unless County Executive Stinger and Mayor Cruson choose to put that in the new charter that they're charged with writing.
Correct.
Well,
and the same thing with any same thing with any anti-discrimination laws that exist in the city charter but not the county charter, everything like that. So everything that's not in both charters will be done away with if it's only in the city charter.
Right.
Well, if I was a activist on this issue, and I'd be trying to hedge my bets and get one passed out in St. Louis County if it was at all possible, because you don't want a merger to go through and then all the struggle CapCar fought for would then be reversed. So,
well,
that's a merger issue to me.
I think, that's a sub rosa fight that you have to have, but I think you really have to be operating. I think you got to have I think you got to start 1,000 fires. I mean, I don't think you can because people are telling me there are multiple groups who are out there trying to organize around this. I said, well, then you're going to need multiple groups. It's just going to be like the Viet Cong, and when the Americans found out that the Viet Cong were everywhere. You know what I mean? They were in Saigon. They were, they thought they were fighting them out in the boonies, and they were everywhere. They had infiltrated the entire. And I think you got to take the same attitude about this. You got to go out and you got to try to get everybody against you.
Well, I'm just going to say this, and we only got about a minute or two left. What's going to happen with this and what's going to happen, but policing is a major issue for me. Both from a safety issue, my brother-in-law was killed in the city of St. Louis in front of two police officers, and they didn't arrest nobody, and my mother killed and no arrest from there. And also from the perspective that I was in Ferguson when Belmar was out there snickering and laughing as his military vehicles were randomly tear gassing people, including myself. I was out there when Belmar was hobnobbing and glad-handing with the Oath Keepers. So the prospect of Belmar being over the entirety of St. Louis City and County is really not one that I think we should take lightly. Definitely, if there is not a oversight in place, if those hard-won games of CapCar are dismissed, that would be a real tragedy for St. Louis. I'd like to thank y'all, STL Rainbow, Virvus Jones, Andrew Arkills. I'd like to thank all three of y'all for being on here tonight. We're going to be looking at this moving forward. This is, I view, as one of the, if you count in your hand, of the historic events in the history of St. Louis. This vote will be on that hand of some of the most significant things ever in St. Louis, because it could permanently alter the structure. And we'll be looking forward. Thank y'all for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. All right. Thanks.
Honey, why are you putting $2 into all these sandwich bags?
Meal prep.
I don't think that's how it works.
Sure it is, because all my favorites at McDonald's are just $2. For breakfast, I'm getting sausage McGriddles, lunch, 6-piece chicken McNuggets. Or maybe a triple cheeseburger. Not sure, but whatever I choose, I'll be prepared.
Uh-huh.
Get sausage McGriddles, 6-piece chicken McNuggets, and for a limited time, the triple cheeseburger for just $2 each on McDonald's $1, $2, $3 menu. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
This brown bag lunch, this staycation, this do-it-yourself oil change, this second shift at work. At American Family Insurance, we understand what it takes to make your first home a reality. It's the same as it takes to protect it. For home, auto, life, and business. Visit amfam.com to learn more. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly. American Family Insurance.
American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.